Elizabeth Marchese, and this is the story of my journey and the work I have done on it to become a critical multicultural educator. My mother was a K-8 licensed educator for 38 years. She taught special education in Texas before moving to Virginia in 3rd, 2nd, and 1st grade, respectively. All my life, I was proud of my mother and her professional career. She was a dedicated and caring teacher who was beloved by all who knew her. I knew I wanted to become an educator, just like my mom. However, she had a different dream for me, and because of this, I did not pursue my dream to be a teacher until my early 30s. I am a white female, and I grew up not knowing who my biological father was, and I still do not know. My mother married my father, the man who raised me my whole life and eventually adopted me and who I see as my dad, when I was 3. Therefore, my family does not conform to the traditional nuclear family. I do not know exactly what my ethnicity and race are other than what my mother told me. She said she didn't know our family history well, and she guessed that we have Irish and Scottish roots. My father was born in Germany and lived there until he was 6 months old before coming to the United States. However, he was an American born abroad because his father was stationed in Germany for the U.S. Army. So my dad's lineage is German and American. I have directly experienced discrimination based on my gender, age, and my ADHD. These experiences gave me personal insight into how it feels to be discriminated against, as well as the difficulty of overcoming the resulting barriers to justice and equity that arose as a direct result of this discrimination. As a student with a learning disability, I struggled with learning math and science for many years. It was not until I re-entered college in 2018 that I attained the resources and education necessary to overcome this struggle and emerge confident in my math and science knowledge, skills, and abilities in 2022. While overcoming the challenges associated with my disability, I learned that I could do anything I set my mind to, no matter the level of difficulty. Believing in myself and being confident that I would learn and master the material, no matter the difficulty, was a huge piece of my learning puzzle. This was an incredibly powerful lesson which I communicate to my students every chance I get. As an adult with a learning disability, I've recognized how challenging it can be to conform to traditional education requirements to learn in the classroom. For these reasons, I chose to become an educator so I can do something to make a difference and bring about change in the form of equity and social justice within my classroom every day. I will now discuss and critically analyze how my licensure coursework has helped me to develop my prowess as a critical multicultural educator to serve intersectionally diverse students and their families through all aspects of my work as a teacher. From CME 705, Norma Angelica Marin, 2018, discussed the importance of respecting students' names and some of the ways educators can accomplish this. By engaging in critical self-reflection, I can become more aware of my own biases with naming practices. Marin also noted by honoring students' names and creating opportunities for them to share their stories, students can gather deeper comprehension of the political, historical, and socio-cultural influences in naming practices. By learning to correctly pronounce my students' names, I can show respect and validate students' cultural, ethnic, racial, and linguistic and religious identities. Through the implementation of these and other practices to honor, respect, validate, and affirm students' identities, I have and am continuing to develop my prowess as a critical multicultural educator. I think that providing students with a safe space where they can, as Marin put it, feel a sense of pride about their names can have a profound impact on their lives by helping them realize they can maintain a positive racial, ethnic, linguistic, and cultural identity. The second source that I used from CME 705 in this video is Affirming Diversity, the Socio-Political Context of Multicultural Education. So, Affirming Diversity, the Socio-Political Context of Multicultural Education by Nieto and Bode, 2018, allowed me to consider the myriad ways I can and will support my students in their educational endeavors to help them be successful academically, behaviorally, emotionally, and socially. The text proposes the development of a humanizing pedagogy that values the experiential, cultural, linguistic backgrounds of students rather than maintaining a specific instructional strategy. In this way, I am able to provide my students with authentic and meaningful learning experiences that are relevant to them. In Chapter 8, Nieto and Bode, 2018, discuss what educators and schools can do to create successful learning environments for their students. Some of the most important and impactful things I can and will do to accomplish this include helping my students feel connected to school by letting them know they belong through cultural and linguistic connections, such as learning students' languages and being knowledgeable and comfortable with students' cultures. I can and will become what Ricardo Stanton Salazar has called an institutional agent. That is, providing a social network for my students, which includes things like securing needed tutoring services and information on college admissions. And the most important and impactful thing I can and will do, according to Nieto and Bode 2018, is show my students that I care through the amount of time I dedicate to them, my patience, and how well I prepare my class and pique their interests in learning. I think the impact of showing my students I care, helping them feel connected to school by showing them they belong, and being an institutional agent can influence their lives and help them maintain a positive and successful educational trajectory. My third source from CME 705 was School Resegregation in the Mississippi of the West, Community Counter-Narratives on the Return to Neighborhood Schools in Las Vegas, 1968 to 1994. The article by Sonia Horsford, Carrie Sampson, and Felicia Forletta discussed the authentic historical account of African American settlement in Las Vegas, the racial segregation faced by the African American community, and the desegregation and resegregation of schools in Las Vegas. Horsford et al., 2013. I am glad I read this article because it helped me learn that Las Vegas has a complex history regarding racial segregation in schools, and after reading the article, I have a deeper understanding of what happened and how to better serve my students, their families, and my community. Horsford, Sampson, and Forletta, 2013, noted that this historical project asserts the importance of the personal and community experiences of people of color as sources of knowledge, from page 5. That is, giving a voice to those who are otherwise silenced or ignored provides opportunities for more accurate and authentic accounts of history through the lens of those who experienced and or witnessed the events. By acquiring this knowledge and insight and utilizing it to incorporate students and their families' stories and histories in my classroom instruction, I can engage students and their families in more authentic and meaningful ways, which will create a more robust educational experience for them. By giving my students and their families a voice, listening authentically to what they have to say, and interweaving their voices into the lessons and curriculum, I am able to show them I value their contributions and affirm their identities as well. My hope is this will stay with them throughout their life, that they will know and believe in themselves and have confidence in their abilities to succeed. My fourth source from CME 705 was the video Race, the Power of an Illusion. In the Race, the Power of an Illusion video, I developed my critical and multicultural educator prowess through learning that the United States has and continues to commit atrocious acts of racism through implementing and perpetuating interpersonal, structural, and institutional racism. Smith, 2003. This video taught me more about the ways systemic racism impacts our students, from funding based on property taxes to redlining. Smith, 2003. Having a clear understanding of what racism is, how and where it can manifest, what it can look like, who is impacted, and how they are impacted can help me to actively seek and implement ways to stop it. Most of what I saw in this video ran contrary to what I was taught growing up, or was all new information I had never heard before. I am grateful I saw this video. It helped me to better understand the ways I can make a difference. For example, the video talked about how we need to think about the things we can influence and ask ourselves, how am I making this a more equitable environment? Who is included in this picture and who isn't? Who has had opportunities in my environment and who hasn't? And what can I do about that? Smith, 2003, 55-minute timestamp. Keeping these questions in my mind as I move through my world can help me continuously work to disrupt and dismantle racism in our country, starting in my classroom. The fifth source from CME 705 that I chose for this assignment was Whose Culture Has Capital? A critical race theory discussion of community cultural wealth. In this article, Yoso, 2005, discusses 6 forms of community cultural capital that have the potential to transform the process of schooling, from page 70. That is, by reviewing the aspirational, navigational, social, linguistic, familial, and resistant resources students are already in possession of before they enter the classroom as assets rather than deficits. I can change the way my students learn to better serve them. Yoso, 2005. Utilizing students' community cultural capital can create a learning environment that respects and validates not only my students, but their parents and families, as well as the community. It can create stronger relationships that run deep with gratitude and love for my students and their families, and the wealth of knowledge they bring to our school and share with the community. Moreover, redesigning the curriculum to incorporate and engage students' community cultural wealth signals that their pre-existing assets are valuable, thus empowering students to use them. Yoso, 2005. From outside of CME 705, my 6th source is Power, Penalty, and Critical Praxis, employing intersectionality in educator practices to achieve school equity. In the article Power, Penalty, and Critical Praxis, employing intersectionality in educator practices to achieve school equity, Carey et al. 2018 discusses the implications of applying intersectionality within the field of education, noting that schools are domains of power that ultimately mirror and perpetuate the marginalization of oppression of students of color. The authors explain that educators must first recognize that these dynamics continually penalize some and privilege others, and then must work intentionally to identify and act against domains of power and privilege. Until I read this article, I did not really understand or know what intersectionality was, but I knew that some of my students were seemingly struggling much more than others, and I knew I needed to figure out why to help them succeed. After reading this article, things started to become clear for me, and I could see the racial injustices taking place in almost every situation and assignment and lesson in and out of my classroom. This article helped me develop my prowess as a critical multicultural educator by shining a light on what intersectionality is and how I can utilize it as an instrument to create socially just and equitable learning environments for my students within my classroom. Carey et al. 2018. My 7th source for this video was Vyatsky's Zone of Proximal Development. My academic scaffolding prowess developed from the article Vyatsky's Zone of Proximal Development, where I learned about the Zone of Proximal Development, or ZPD, originally developed by Vyatsky 1978, which McLeod explains represents the difference between what a learner can do without help and what they can do with guidance and encouragement. 2025. That is the place where students are ready and capable of learning something new with the right amount of support from their teacher. The article explains that what starts as external guidance becomes internalized, transforming into independent capabilities. McLeod, 2025. The internalization process involves active engagement, which allows learners to develop a strong comprehension of the underlying principles and strategies. This is a process known as scaffolding, which McLeod explains, underscores the importance of providing support that aligns with the learner's current capabilities and gradually diminishes as the learner gains mastery. McLeod, 2025. According to McLeod, 2025, and Puntenbecker, 2022, page 453. The link between ZPD and scaffolding was made by researchers like Brunner, 1985, and Kasdan, 1979. As Puntenbecker explains, instruction in the ZPD then came to be viewed as taking the form of providing assistance or scaffolding within a child's ZPD, enabling her to solve a problem, carry out a task, or complete and achieve a goal that she would not be able to achieve independently. Utilizing scaffolding to help students in the ZPD reach new levels of achievement through differentiation and modification will help all my students reach their highest levels of growth and development. My eighth source that comes out from outside of CME 705 is Supporting Teachers in Designing for Intersectionality. The authors of Supporting Teachers in Designing for Intersectionality assert that educators can cultivate precise opportunities for learning that are unique to each student's intersectional Crenshaw 1989 identities through the implementation of a design-centered approach to instruction. War and Wakefield, 2023. The authors direct attention to the work of two scholars, David Perkins, 1986, and Glanville, 2006, through an exploration and comparison, respectively, to provide an account of what designing for intersectionality means for teaching knowing. Perkins, 1986, posited that knowledge, when thought of as a design, can be created to serve a purpose. War and Wakefield, 2023, page 177. War and Wakefield continue by highlighting the distinction Glanville, 2006, made between knowledge of and knowledge for, by citing that knowledge of is when educators may know something about or of their students, whereas knowledge for is knowledge developed out of necessity to support students' learning. War and Wakefield, 2023. They add that knowledge for does not assume teachers have a comprehensive understanding of their students' or context. Instead, teachers develop the knowing they need to act in the context and support their students. Because that knowing is designed, it is fluid and adaptable, constantly responding to changes. War and Wakefield, 2023, page 178. This article helped me develop my prowess as a critical multicultural educator by helping me recognize that many educational curricula commonly contain biases and that how I, as an educator, create or use instructional materials as I design for learning is vital to educational equity. War and Wakefield, 2023, page 178. Not only will I develop knowledge for my students to support their learning in and out of our dynamic classroom, but I will also critically analyze curricular materials before use and create specific instructional materials as needed to support my students' learning. My ninth source from outside of CME 705 is Teaching for Social Justice in Early Childhood Classrooms, Developing, Humanizing, and Critical Spaces for Young Children. My prowess as a critical multicultural educator was increased through reading and analyzing this next article because it made me think about how I can and will support my students. In the Teaching for Social Justice in Early Childhood Classrooms, Developing Humanizing and Critical Spaces for Young Children article, Agarwal Rangnath 2021 discusses the pedagogies and practices 3 justice-oriented educators created to ensure inclusivity for their students' voices, histories, and lived experiences. The educators do this through storytelling, creating strong relationships with their students, and by discussing social issues in the classroom using literature. Agarwal Rangnath 2021. Utilizing these and other approaches I discussed earlier in my classroom instruction will help me support and encourage my students to develop critical perspectives through which they can view and think about their worlds, affirm their identities, and provide my students with a place to heal while also comprehending the different levels of injustice they see and face. Agarwal Rangnath 2021, page 203. My 10th and final source that comes from CME 705, which was an additional required reading for this video, was The Representation of Social Groups in U.S. Educational Materials and Why It Matters. In the Representation of Social Groups in U.S. Educational Materials and Why It Matters article, Amanda Latasha Armstrong, 2021, discusses the results and implications of the report, which summarizes what studies say about how characters are represented in educational materials and how this affects student learning and their understanding of themselves and different people, from page 5. In the article, Geneva Gay of the University of Washington is credited with explaining in her 2018 book that the asset-based approach of culturally responsive teaching employs the prior experiences, cultural knowledge, performance styles, and frames of reference of ethnically diverse students to create learning experiences that are more effective for and relevant to them. Armstrong, 2021, page 6. Armstrong 2021 notes that through this approach, educators can make meaningful connections between the curriculum and home experiences, validate and incorporate students' culture in the learning environment, and build on students' pre-existing knowledge and skills, from page 6. The article also discusses Rudine Sims Bishop's establishment of the concept of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, which was written in 1990 and delineates the different experiences offered to students through literature. Armstrong, 2021, page 6. Bishop indicated that literature materials with mirrors provide students with opportunities to see themselves in what they are reading and relate directly with the story, while windows provide students with the opportunity to learn about, acknowledge, and appreciate cultures and contexts that differ from their own. Armstrong, 2021, page 6. My prowess as a multicultural educator was developed through this article because the research results contained in it reinforced my understanding of and ability to implement the many aspects of culturally responsive education that are pivotal to providing students with an education that is equity-driven, socially just, and that seeks to break the devastating cycle of marginalization. Through my personal experiences, observations, and analyses, I came to realize that I can do something to make a difference, or I can stand by and do nothing. The thought of doing something to make a difference was overwhelmingly powerful, and as I grew and matured into an adult, I developed an even deeper understanding of how teaching can make a difference in the lives of students every day. Through my educational experiences and through the work I have done over the course of my undergraduate and master's degree programs, I have developed my critical multicultural educator prowess, and I am confident I will make a difference in the lives of my students every day by providing equal opportunities for success through equity. That is, providing differentiated support to students based on their individual needs. However, my work as a learner will never be finished, as learning is a lifelong endeavor that serves to help us grow and become more aware, understanding, appreciative, accepting, loving, caring, and more. Learning helps us acknowledge our societal history. It helps us uncover the truth whether we like it or not, and it helps to motivate us to want to change the way things are for current and future generations. I think as a person with my specific identities, histories, dispositions, experiences, outlooks on life, and so forth, can contribute positive, meaningful, comprehensive, individualized, caring, and lasting educational experiences to the personal and academic growth and development of all my current and future students at the highest levels. I, Catherine Marchese, did not use AI to develop this assignment. This work is my own original creation, featuring myself and my own voice. And now I will turn the camera around and show my references pages. Whoops. If I could figure out how to. Okay.